So I'm going to be telling you how I went from having a bachelor's of science degree in biology to how I became a web developer self-taught. So sit back, I'm going to be sharing with you 3 skills or 3 tips that I would recommend in order to transition from hard science such as biology to becoming a full stack web developer like I am. So in 2019, I ended up getting a bachelor's of science degree in biology. I was on a pre-med track. However, early 2019, like my last semester of college, or my first semester of my last year of college, I decided I didn't want to go do this pre-med thing. Like, I wasn't messing with the whole healthcare. I didn't want to go to med school. That was pretty much the whole thing. I didn't want to sit for the MCAT, and I didn't want to go to med school. So I had to pivot. But luckily, it was my last year, so I ended up getting my degree, and I graduated with a bachelor's of science in biology. So I had the option of always going back and taking the MCAT within a certain period of time, but I knew it wasn't gonna happen. So for the Nigerians watching this, in our culture, you're either 3 things. You're either a lawyer, a doctor, or an engineer. And by engineer, we're not talking about computer science. We're talking about the upper echelon engineers. So imagine your last year of college when everyone's expecting you to go to med school. You're just like, I'm not going. I digress though. So moving on, I got lucky, quote unquote, with the whole COVID thing because that was right when I was going to take my gap year. So around that time, when the COVID thing hit, I had more time to figure out what I wanted to do. And this is where I figured out web development. So I was actually just on my laptop one day, just browsing, and a pop-up ad came up and it said jobs you can do without having to go back to school for a degree. And I was like, this is a scam. But something in me just said, open up the pop-up. So I opened it and it took me to like this Google listing of like jobs you can do without a degree. And I saw web development. And I was like, all right, this kind of sounds cool, because my whole understanding of web development was drag and drop. You want to build a website, you just drag it, you drop it. That was what I thought web development was. So I ended up looking it up. And what I saw was this beautiful nonsense on my screen. Like, I looked up code and all, and it looked beautiful, but it was all nonsense. And that nonsense is what I figured out to be web development today. I fell in love with it. I was like, this is beautiful, but it's nonsense. How do I learn this nonsense so it can make sense? It's like abstract math. How do I learn this? And once I saw I could learn it on my own, I could use YouTube, I could use various resources to learn this thing, I was hooked. Right on the spot, I was hooked. And I knew this was how I was going to make my career. So now, how did I gain the knowledge that I needed to become a developer? Well, what I did was I started with learning HTML. So it took a couple of weeks to a month to really understand how HTML works. So I don't come from a coding background. But HTML was kind of like English in a way. So it's a little bit closer to English than it is to like JavaScript. So it's a lot closer to English than it is to JavaScript, because a div is a division. Like you kind of understand the syntax. So it takes not that long to understand. And then came CSS. And with CSS, it was a bit more difficult, because with CSS, you want the whole idea of being a web developer when you get into it is whatever is up here, you want that to appear on the screen. You want whatever's in your mind to be architected like in a great manner onto the screen. You want to render exactly what's on your mind on the screen. But as a beginner, you can't do that, because CSS is so in depth. Like, there's so many layers, there's so many animation styles, there's so many things you want. So if I want my screen to do a certain thing, my page to do a certain thing on load, I have to kind of wait to like learn how to do that thing. So impatience was what made CSS a bit harder to do, because you want it to do this thing, but you're just learning how to change a background to dark, to black, to blue. You're learning these things. So that's what made CSS a bit more difficult, because with HTML, whatever you type within the code, you see it on the screen. So when you get to CSS, it's like, okay, I want my page to do this, I want my page to do that. but it takes time. You have to learn how to do these things. You have to learn how to make your pages responsive, how to make different things on a responsive page act a certain way. So this made CSS a little bit more challenging, but eventually you get used to it and you move on. Now we move to JavaScript, and for JavaScript, this is where having a hard science background kind of impairs your learning ability. With science, like biology, you're taught to memorize, right? Nothing really changes in biology when you study it that fast. So a 4-year degree in biology, nothing in the world of biology is rapidly changing that fast for you to say, oh, I have to use a different logic or a different thought process to figure out the test answer. You just kind of have to memorize whatever the teacher says, right? That's different for programming or coding. For programming or coding, you have to think logically. You have to understand why the problem's there and how to solve that problem. So, for example, if I call an API and I get some data, I might need to do a lot of things with that data for different projects. So I might need to sort through the data. I might need to iterate through it using map. I might need to append that data with something else. I might need to multiply the data I get. Things like that. You can't memorize for every single scenario. It's pretty much impossible. But what I can do is I can learn how to solve the problem that's in front of me. Whereas in biology or like biochem, if I'm asked about the Krebs cycle, maybe the third step or whatever, I just memorize it, right? That's you memorize it and you pour it out on the test because it's not going to change anytime soon. The ADP ATP process is the same. Like it's not, unless something happens that's so drastic that it changes the world of science as we know it, you just memorize it. We can't do that for JavaScript. So that's what made JavaScript so hard, because I thought when you learn JavaScript, you just memorize things. Oh, map function, just memorize it. Sort, filter, memorize it. But there's sometimes where you might have a nested array. You might have a single array. You might have whatever. So you have to think of things such as time complexities. You have to think of these things that you just can't memorize. You have to know how the problem needs to be solved, and you have to use a logical way of doing it. This is something that's hindered. This is a way of thinking that's hindered when you have a hard science background, such as biology, chemistry, things like that. These are more memorization. That's why people who do really well in this tend to have things like photographic memory, like I do. So you have a photographic memory, you just memorize things and it's easy. So things like that help. Now, how did I conquer this obstacle? So I used tools at my disposal, free tools at my disposal. I used Free Code Camp. I used Udemy. I used Codecademy. I used Free Code Camp. I don't know if I already said that, but I used these things, and they were pretty much free to use. Now, if you wanted to get maybe the certificate saying you did this, then I would pay here and there. But for the most part, there's so many resources out there. So I didn't do a boot camp. I just went as I went along. So if Codecademy, there might be a section where I'm like, this part, they don't dissect it as well, but they do in Free Code Camp. So I'll head over to Free Code Camp to understand that subject better. So maybe it be looping through an array or something like that, or nested arrays. Maybe I go to Free Code Camp for that. The goal is to learn new concepts, and you don't always have to learn it the same way. One concept might take you longer than the other, but what I realized was sometimes I would sit there and be like, nah, there's no way. I had to take 2 weeks to learn that. There's no way I just learned that in a day. But that's the reality of things. Some things in coding you just learn that fast, and some it takes a long period of time to learn. Think data structures and algorithms. So that is continuous. People learn that forever. Whereas manipulating the DOM is something someone could learn in a few weeks or maybe a month. So you have to understand how you learn. Lastly, YouTube became a very good outlet. So with YouTube, I was able to see people code from scratch all the way to the end. So there was structure there. So I understood that if I wanted to start a project, these are the things I need to get laid out first, and then I can build my project up. There's a structure to the code block. So I just don't start from the middle and then build out. I have to start from either the back end or I start from the front end. So things like that were what made me realize, okay, this is a great tool for me to use. Also, with projects that people build, so let's say someone builds a clone of a website, I build the clone out with them, but that didn't mean I was learning how to build the code. That means I was learning how to structure my components, structure my nav, things like that, the semantics of things. However, when I was done with that project, I too would try and rebuild a clone of something else using the skills I learned. I will run into roadblocks, but that's why we have Google. That's why we have, now we have ChatGPT. So you can use those tools because they're at your peril. So it's not impossible to transition. You just have to have an open mind saying, I must use various resources to learn this thing. So now the part that everyone's been waiting for, the 3 tips that will help you in transitioning from a hard science background like biology to web development. The first tip is be tenacious. So you have to look at it as a class. So you have to look at it as a course in college or a course anywhere you're taking a course. You have to study. You just have to put the time in. So I always say you don't have to make coding when you start learning how to code or program. You don't have to make it the number one thing on your schedule, but you have to make it a priority. So whether it be an hour before you go to bed, an hour during your break, an hour here or there, or 5 hours in a week, like you just need to put the time in, because like I said, it's not memorization. You have to work on it. That's how you get better at coding up projects or just learning the logic that's going to help you propel your career. The second thing, which is a bit harder for us with a background like hard science, is don't memorize. Try as hard as possible to not memorize. Know what the question is asking. Understand why you're using the method you're using. Memorization will only get you so far. That's why one application can be written with one language, but when you open up the code, it's structured in so many different ways. It's the syntax is the same, meaning it's JavaScript, but the logic that all these people use are different. Hence why there's no uniformity when you write code. Everyone writes a specific and separate way. If everyone just wrote the same code, then everything would just be uniform. There's no need to like logically think, you just memorize. So that's the thing. Everyone can't have the same code. Everyone can't have the same code base. We all write differently. We all think differently. But the result is what matters. Did you think fast enough? Does the code run fast enough and efficiently? And is it correct? These are things you have to take notice of. So, like I said, try as hard as possible not to rely on memorization and you'll be fine. Lastly, don't be ignorant. That's self-explanatory, isn't it? What I mean by that is it's okay to not know. You're not going to know everything. Hell, the people who've been doing this for 70 years, come on. The people who've been doing this for years upon years upon years still don't know everything. Technology changes. But solving problems does not change. Like thinking logically is just thinking logically. You can enhance the way you think, but it's still thinking logically. So it's okay to not know everything, but it's a great disservice to yourself to remain ignorant. Meaning you have so many tools at your disposal. You have ChatGPT, you have all these great Udemy, you have Codecademy, you have Free Code Camp, you have all these things at your disposal. Don't put them to waste based on pride. Don't be like, oh, I'll figure it out. No one cares about how you write the code, which is a separate topic. Meaning, as long as the code functions as it's supposed to and it's efficient, no one cares how, once again, it's another topic for another day. No one cares how smart you wrote that code. Meaning, if an employer comes to me and says, hey, I have a contract for you, can you build me a dashboard? What they're looking for is that it works and it's efficient and it looks good. And when I put in an input, there's the required output. Like when I put something in, I get what I want. That's just what the employer wants. Now you can write the greatest, slickest sexiest code and put it in there. But they're never going to check it. They don't care. Does it work or not? So that's what I mean. So on a higher level, yes, it does. Your code does matter. How you write it matters. The structure matters. But for the most part, in everyday life, it's not the most, it's not the most glaring, or like, it doesn't matter. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, there's levels to when it matters. But for a project, just make sure that your code works and it's efficient. It's working efficiently. No one cares if it's the sexiest, most beautiful code you've ever written. No one cares. Does it work? You know what I'm saying? You can write great code and it just doesn't work. It just breaks every time someone uses it. Like the application breaks every time someone uses it, but it's structured nice. It's nice. The variable's name is correct. All those things don't matter to a degree. So don't use your pride of, oh, I'm going to figure this out by myself. Because a lot of us science majors, we have that pride. Like, no, I'm going to figure this thing out. Asking for help is okay. Being ignorant is a disservice to yourself, because you're just going to hurt yourself even more. So now back to what I said in number 1, be tenacious. When I started out, I didn't know people who coded. Try and make an impact in terms of networking. So if you're on social media and you can, you follow people who code or this and that, try and reach out to them respectfully. No one has to help you. Remember that. So try and reach out to them respectfully. See if they have some time that you can use to network, use to talk to them. They can look at your code. You never know. You might find a friend. So with all that said, that's how I transitioned from hard science such as biology to web development, full stack developer, self-taught. So if you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Let me know what your major is. Let me know if you don't even have a major, you're undeclared. Let me know if you're not even going the school route. Let me know what you guys think of the video. Let me know what part of code or tech you guys are trying to, what part of tech you guys are trying to pursue. Leave that in the comment section. I'm trying to build a community here. So with all that said, don't forget again to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.